ToRaH Guardian, speaking the absolute truth. ToRaH Nation. Shalom, shalom, Yashar'Al and Yahudah, grafted in Gentiles into the body of HaMashiach. We're grateful to the Most High for another opportunity to share a word, a testimony, to share whatever it is that Yahuwah gives us to share with you. Yahuwah's called me to cry loud and to spare not, to lift up my voice like a shofar in Zion, to warn the nation of Yashar'Al and Yahudah that they need to repent. Understanding that we are a chosen people, people who are under a perpetual covenant, a covenant that Yahuwah expects us to honor, right? And, though because of our ancestral disobedience and because of which we ended up in perpetual slavery and captivities in the lands of our enemies, right? Yahuwah still expects us to turn back to Him, right? He has provided the atonement in Mashiach Yahusha. So turn back to Him through faith in the atonement of Mashiach Yahusha and resume obedience to ToRaH. Resume living and breathing and allowing ToRaH to lead and steer your life, right? We are people of a covenant, right? And the covenant for us is a covenant of circumcision, right? The covenant of circumcision wasn't given to the other nations. It was given to us. And some may argue, well, in Mashiach Yahusha, He said that we don't need to concern ourselves with circumcision because Yahuwah is only interested in the circumcision of the heart. No, not at all. Yahuwah is and has provided the capacity for your heart to be circumcised through Hamashiach Yahusha in order that you could keep ToRaH, right? In order for you to be the demonstration of ToRaH. So that means Hebrew, Yahuwah has a covenant with you, and that covenant is circumcision. That covenant was given to your father, Abraham, and it was given to you as a perpetual, eternal covenant, right? Throughout all your generations, right? So, the fact is that, we have gotten away from this covenant, right? This covenant that Yahuwah cut with us through Abraham. When we were on the continent of Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, before these diabolical colonizers came over feeding us Jesus and the Lord Baal, we were serving Yahuwah, right? We had a Hebraic name for it, or we had an African or a dialect name that was the equivalent of Yahuwah, but we served Yahuwah, and we had an oral tradition that we upheld in relationship to circumcision on the 8th day and feast days, things that we celebrated, and it was what we did. It was who we are. It was who we were. But when we came over to this wicked nation, and we became the objects of slavery, right? We became the objects of slavery, right? We began at that time to live in a manner that did not please Yahuwah. We served other elves. We served other gods, the gods of wood and stone. We served the elves of wood and stone, right? That's what we did. And because we did, we lost our traditions, our oral traditions. We lost that which made us a people, called by his name. And now, having the knowledge of the understanding that we're his people, and now having a way to return to him, it becomes our responsibility through faith in Hamashiach Yahusha to now walk out and live out this covenant. To be a representation, a demonstration of this covenant, right? To keep ToRaH and live according to everything that he has set forth for us as a people that is called by his name. The covenant of circumcision has never been done away with, right? The covenant of circumcision to a people has never been done away with. And in Hamashiach Yahusha, we can reconnect, reestablish this covenant that he has to a people, right? That he will always have to a people that bear in their bodies a mark of circumcision, right? Now, circumcision, apart from the witness, right, can't save you, can't bring you Yeshua. The circumcision with the witness guarantees you, as a people, salvation. Right? It guarantees you salvation as a people. Right? As a people, you cannot defy a covenant that Yahuwah has set in motion for you to abide by. You can't excuse it and say, well, I don't have to honor this part of the ToRaH, right, because it has been done away with, or because I am in Hamashiach Yahusha now, so I don't need that covenant. No! Wrong answer. Wrong frickin' answer. And I'm going to tell you why, right? That covenant was established between Yahuwah for a people as a perpetual covenant. Perpetual, meaning that it would never end. Yahushua HaMashiach, when confronting the people on the feast day, said to them that you circumcise your children on the Shabbat, right? You circumcise. Yahushua himself was circumcised as a Hebrew. Yahushua did not pull us away, us who are Hebrews, from walking in a ToRaH that was a ToRaH of circumcision, right? He did not, right? Now, granted, I bless the Most High, right? And I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, I bless the Most High for him having spoken something into my father and caused me to be circumcised as a baby, right? I'm grateful that the Most High spoke something in me to seek my son's circumcision of a covenant, right? I did it not knowing that it was for covenant purposes, but I did it because I knew it was something that I wanted for him. The doctor that my wife had, her OBGYN doctor, you know, he was a Jewish doctor. And I told him, you know, I said, I would like to get my son circumcised. And he told me, yeah, we'll do it on the 8th day. Right? Yahuwah positioned me in the covenant as a young boy, and now to this day I recognize how important it is for us to walk in the covenant as a people. He did not give this to the other nations. Actually, in Jubilees, the 15th chapter, he speaks explicitly about the difference that we are to have in our circumcision, our covenant, the cutting of our flesh, from the other nations who do not do this. Right? So when Shaul was dealing with these Gentiles in reference to the need to be circumcised, well, they didn't need to be circumcised because they weren't under the same covenant. It was a covenant that wrought Yeshua, but there was a covenant that the nation had, right, Yashar'Al and Yahudah, that Yahuwah expected them to honor, expected them to abide by, expected them to keep, expected them to live under, right? It was non-negotiable. It will always be non-negotiable because it's a ToRaH. Yes, the idea is that the outward appearance of a circumcised individual represents a covenant. It represents a covenant with a people to their Ruach, right? But it was given to a nation of people that Yahuwah gave a covenant that he expected them to honor. He expected them to honor. Shaul was running into issues with the church at the time because, you had these Hebrews was running in and telling these Gentiles that they needed to be circumcised. And Shaul said, you don't need to be circumcised. You didn't receive Hamashiach because you were circumcised. You received Hamashiach, right, because you believed, right? You believed, right? They didn't need it because they didn't have a covenant with Yahuwah like that. They weren't his people. You are his people. You are a people of covenant, and Yahuwah expects you to honor the covenant. So Hebrew man, right? Hebrew man, right, that believes and has faith in Hamashiach Yahusha, you need to be circumcised to honor and fulfill the covenant that Yahuwah had made and has given to your father Abraham. Yes, faith in Hamashiach Yahusha establishes you and keeps you in alignment with the ToRaH. So that means that if you've received the witness of Yahushua Hamashiach and you have grown in the knowledge of him and walking in obedience to ToRaH, guess what? You know that the covenant of circumcision is required. It is an act of it's an act of obedience. And you say, but I wasn't circumcised the 8th day. Well, Abraham wasn't circumcised the 8th day. Abraham was circumcised when he was 90 and 9. 90 and 9. His son, Ishmael, was circumcised when he was like 13. Right? So Yahuwah expects you to circumcise yourself, man. And he expects you to circumcise your son if you're going to be under the covenant that he has cut with Abraham. Yitzhak and Yaakov. You got to fulfill that. That is the covenant that he has cut with his people. That is a perpetual covenant. He himself said that is an everlasting covenant. That is an eternal covenant. What is eternal? Eternal is forever, without a stop or stoppage. It's eternal. So you may ask, well, man, you may say, well, man, you telling me that I am 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and I'm Hebrew. I know that I am of the lineage and of, yes, you have to be circumcised. right? You had to be circumcised. Listen, after Hamashiach's witness, they didn't stop circumcising. They didn't stop identifying with the covenant, because the covenant was to them. These other nations didn't have to do it because you wouldn't have a covenant with them. He had a covenant with you. Well, isn't the new birth a new covenant? No, it's a renewed covenant. It's a renewal to us. We have to renew the things that we knew that we didn't do and move in obedience to fulfill. Now, because of Hamashiach Yahusha, we can. So we have to renew our traditions and our oral customs. You have to do these things. Yahuwah just didn't say that just to be blowing smoke. Yahuwah never spoke a Torah just for and tell you it was perpetual throughout all times, and you decide because you came into this walk at the time that you came in it, but it's through faith in the Mashiach Yahusha, and you weren't circumcised, but you were part of the covenant. Listen, you need to be circumcised. And you need to circumcise your son. Oh, well, I'll let my son be circumcised. No, everybody in your house is supposed to be circumcised. What you mean let your son make the decision to be circumcised? You better take him and circumcise him. Take him to the doctor and say, listen, my son is not circumcised. I want you to circumcise him. I'm not circumcised. I need to be circumcised. Listen, man. Listen. The temporary, whatever you experience as a result of circumcision is a small price to pay to be in his covenant. Again, I'm not talking to the other nations. I'm talking to Hebrews. I'm talking to Hebrews. Because you got some Hebrews that say, well, you don't need to be circumcised. Liars. Listen, how y'all going to pick and choose covenants? That covenant was an eternal covenant. That covenant didn't end when Yahushua Mashiach came on the scene. That covenant didn't come after. Listen, that covenant has to be renewed in Hamashiach Yahusha. It has to be. It has to be renewed in the covenant. That covenant to a people has to be renewed in Hamashiach Yahusha. It has to be. They want you to move outside of the covenant that Yahuwah has given to you. And if you look at Jubilees, the 15th chapter, it gives you the same experience that you would. It gives you a greater experience than what you have received in Genesis, right? Genesis also said something about Sarah being the mother of many nations. What? King James. Sarah, the mother of many nations. That's not a truth. Sarah's not the mother of many nations. She's the mother of one nation, and that's Yitzhak. I'm telling you, there's things that you have to be able to see and discern in the Ruach HaKodesh, because you'll begin to understand what Yahuwah is saying and doing and what he is requiring of the assembly, of his people. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, I love Yahuwah. And I love his people. But listen, I am not going to preach anything other than what Yahuwah gives me. I'm not going to teach anything that I want to teach myself. If it's in ToRaH and Hamashiach Yahusha has fulfilled, right, the requirements of a restored covenant through his atonement, being a kinsman redeemer, of which he has come to the lost sheep of Yashar'Al with the objective of getting the people of Yahuwah back in line, heart, and by his Ruach HaKodesh, in order for you to fulfill a covenant of circumcision, a covenant of ToRaH. In Christian insanity, because I call it Christian insanity, it's vanity, it's vain for us. mean, they could serve Jesus. They could serve Baal. They could do that. I mean, that's them. But it's insanity to us, right? We understand the need of having Yahuwah's witness. We understand the need of keeping his commandments. Yahusha says, herein lies the patience of the saints, those that keep the commandments and have faith in Hamashiach Yahusha. Listen, the commandments, the ToRaH, make of our oral traditions that we have to keep. These are non-negotiable for us as a nation. They're non-negotiable. They're non-negotiable. And listen, you ain't going to be able to do this without faith in Hamashiach Yahusha's atonement. You can't do this saying, well, I'm ToRaH only. And wrong. You will never be able to satisfy the need of an atonement on your own. You're not qualified. You'll never be qualified. Yahuwah has never appointed you to the priesthood. You are not a high priest. You don't even got a place to go into to conduct said sacrifices. You don't have what Yahuwah has given to the Levitical priesthood that they lost. So that there's a need for an atonement, and Yahusha HaMashiach satisfies that atonement, so that now, having received that witness, right, having turned to him from idols serving Baal and the earth pig, you can now establish or reconnect to Yahuwah through faith in Hamashiach Yahusha's atonement, and now live out the ToRaH of circumcision. Listen, that covenant, ever since I've been reading that covenant means the world to me. Right? That covenant means the world to me. And Yahushua Mashiach can do anything to take away from that covenant. That covenant points to a people. And that covenant points to the restoration of a people. Right? That covenant points to the restoration of a people. Right? You know, you had strangers that wanted to sojourn with Yashar'Al and Yahudah. Right? And Yahuwah said, you know, let them come in and take them in. Right? Right? But we were a people that had a covenant. We weren't supposed to do strangers dirty. Now, if a stranger wanted to come in with his heathenistic practices, no, then we dealt with him. We dealt with him as a heathen. But if he wants to stranger and just wanted to be amongst the people of Yahuwah, guess what? He could. And avail himself of Yahuwah. Right? But a ToRaH and an atonement and a covenant was given to a people. And listen, bro, if you have faith in Hamashiach Yahusha, you need to be circumcised. Because that's your demonstration to the obedience of that ToRaH. And if you have a son, your son needs to be circumcised. Because that's an obedience to that ToRaH. And I don't care what you say. I do not care what you say. It's what ToRaH says. It's what the ToRaH's demonstration is. It is ToRaH demonstration. And you know, you can't base it solely on what you received or have recorded in Genesis. Because Genesis is an abbreviated version that satisfies the expulsion of a disciplined covenant that was highly regarded and reduced to a couple of verses, where you have a more expository explanation of the ToRaH that Yahuwah has given unto a people that are his. So man, if y'all woman, if y'all listen, you are a people of a covenant. And man of Yah, the head of your household, you who claim to be of the nation, you must be circumcised in agreement with ToRaH. And it should not be a hard thing, because the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach should agree with you that as a covenant keeper, a people that is his, it is your responsibility to usher you and your children under this covenant by virtue of circumcision. You got to do it. It's a non-negotiable. You got to do it. It's a non-negotiable. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, called to greatness. Woman of Yahudah, beautifully and wonderfully made. Do not allow what you have been taught in Christianity to convince you that it's okay for you not to be a part of a nation that is a nation birthed through circumcision. That was to be your circumcision throughout your generations. To be your sign of the covenant. Because the covenant was with you. It was not with these other nations. So, with that I say, man of Yah, woman of Yah, called to greatness, woman of Yahudah, beautifully and wonderfully made. Today Yahuwah's favorite. Right? Man of Yahudah. Live up to the covenant that Yahuwah has cut with your forefathers and make your demonstration true. If you're not. And if you're not, if you are, and your son isn't, make that correction. Make that correction. Because perhaps in your ignorance, in the early part of your life, you had no clue. Right? And you didn't know that you had a covenant. But Yahuwah, through Hamashiach Yahushua, will give you an opportunity to make that right. You gotta make that right. So with that, I say shalom, 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 and be blessed.
ToRaH Garden, speaking the absolute truth. ToRaH Nation.